The views and opinions expressed on America's Workforce Union podcast and its digital media channels are solely those of the speakers and do not necessarily represent the views and opinions of the producers or sponsors.
Welcome to the America's Workforce Radio Podcast, the flagship production of the American Workers Radio and Podcast Network, where organized labor and its never-ending fight to protect the rights of the American worker come first. Now, presented by LIUNA, Laborers International Union of North America. Here's your host, Ed Flash Ferens.
NFL refs reach a 7-year collective bargaining agreement. Meanwhile, grad students at Harvard now on strike for 22 days. And today on the show, the latest from the Communication Workers of America, and we check in with the Los Angeles County Federation of Labor. Welcome to the Wednesday, May 13th edition of America's Workforce, where we're available on at least 5 platforms, including YouTube, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Pandora. And when you get an opportunity, here's what you do. Just sign up and receive our shows on a regular basis and give us a rating. We always appreciate those 5-star ratings, so please keep them coming. We have 2 guests joining us on the show today. We're going to kick things off with a longtime sponsor, Frank Mathews, Administrative Director for District 4 of the Communication Workers of America. CWA-union.org is a website you want to go to, and you might want to check out their homepage and read the story about falling behind workers in the Trump economy. Back in April, the Director of Research, Nell Geiser, testified before Congress about what's happened in America. Job quality driven by corporate greed. And we're already seeing a pushback by the electorate. And Frank is going to talk about specifically, now he handles 5 states in the Midwest, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Wisconsin, and Michigan. And we're seeing a sea change here of people coming out and saying, you know what, I can't afford to buy a home. Gas prices are driving me crazy, grocery prices. And it seems like the current administration is tone deaf to what's going on. So Frank is going to speak to that. He's also going to talk about a possibility that property tax in the state of Ohio may be eliminated. And that's not a good idea, says Frank, because if they eliminate that, what are they going to do to make up the difference? We're talking about $21 billion there that would put a hole in services. Would that mean a sales tax increase? Frank's going to discuss all of that and more as our first guest. Then we're going to go to Los Angeles and join our second guest on the show today is Yvonne Wheeler. Yvonne is president of the Los Angeles County Federation of Labor. The website is the lafed.org, lafed.org. Yvonne has spent her entire life supporting civil rights, labor rights. She served as a community activist from her early involvement in the civil rights movement to challenging discrimination in the workplace. Her journey has led her to a career spanning various leadership roles, including the Communication Workers of America, Local 9586, the AFL-CIO, AFSCME, and the A. Philip Randolph Institute. Now, Yvonne was recorded a couple of weeks ago, and she was prepping for the International Workers' Day protests, May Day protests in Los Angeles, where they expected tens of thousands of people. She's going to speak to that and speak to the LA County labor movement in general. By the way, Yvonne is currently the first African-American woman to serve as president of the Los Angeles County Federation of Labor. Again, that website is the lafed.org. Now, a brief look into the world of labor. The segment brought to you by Boyd Watterson Asset Management. You can find more at boydwatterson.com. How about this? Referees of the National Football League have reached a 7-year, that's right, 7-year collective bargaining agreement with the league. The agreement will replace the existing CBA between the NFL and the NFL Referees Association, which was set to expire at the end of this month. The referees ratified the agreement last Thursday, the successful negotiations mean that refs will not go on strike during the 2026-2027 NFL season. Now, the league had already begun preparations for replacement refs sourced from university football. Now, the last time the league used such refs was in 2012. In that season, an incorrect call by replacement referees changed the outcome of the Seahawks-Packers game and prompted the NFL to end its lockout of referees 2 days later. That was a game changer. No pun intended. Harvard Graduate Students Union, HGSU, wrapping up 22 days and counting of striking. In addition to high visibility pickets at Harvard's Science Center Plaza and Longwood campus, the striking workers have engaged in numerous delivery packets across campus, resulting in over 150 deliveries actually turned away. Additionally, the union held a faculty town hall meeting on Monday to address questions the faculty may have surrounding the finals and grading period amidst the strike. The most recent bargaining session between the union and the university took place on April 28th. The next one is set for tomorrow, May 14th, despite numerous requests by the union for earlier bargaining dates. Now, noting that a strike through finals is now a real possibility. HGSU, Grad Students Union, has made several requests of faculty. Number one, do not grade assignments or submit grades for classes that union instructors and graders are usually responsible for. Number two, do not conduct sessions, labs, or office hours normally taught by striking workers, and do not hire replacements. Number three, do not compile or share any lists of strikers. Number four, urge administrators to come to the bargaining table more frequently. And lastly, number five, be transparent with undergrads about why grading is delayed. So we'll see what happens. The next bargaining session is set for tomorrow. Hopefully they'll have some resolve to this strike, which today is now 22 days long. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Frank Mathews on behalf of the Communication Workers of America.
You're listening to America's Workforce with Ed Flash Ferens.
America's Workforce appreciates our sponsor, the Columbus Central Ohio Building and Construction Trades Council, who represents more than 18,000 workers from 19 affiliated local unions and district councils.
America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the Ironworkers. You can find more at ironworkers.org.
America's Workforce Radio is sponsored in part by the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades, District Council 6, representing painters, glazers, drywall finishers, and sign and display industry workers. They remind you that belonging to a union is your right as an American.
This segment of the show is brought to you by the Brotherhood of Maintenance of Way Employees Division of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. For more information, please visit bmwe.org.
It takes LIUNA to keep America running. Over 70,000 public employees are part of LIUNA, the Laborers International Union of North America, delivering critical services such as healthcare and emergency response, as well as maintaining roads and sanitation systems. Even the National Postal Mail Handlers Union, representing over 47,000 U.S. postal workers, is affiliated with LIUNA. Find out what it takes for LIUNA to keep America running at liuna.org. That's LIUNA.org.
Now, back to America's Workforce. Here's Ed Flash Ferens.
And remember, you can check us out on Facebook or follow us on X, formerly known as Twitter. That would be AWF Union Podcast, AWF Union Podcast. Let's go to our featured guest right now. That would be Frank Mathews. Frank, longtime supporter of America's Workforce on behalf of the Communication Workers of America. National website, CWA union.org. If you go to the page, check out the story about Nell Geiser. Now, Nell is the Director of Research for the Communication Workers of America, and Nell testified before the Congressional Election and Workforce Committee. This was in April. The hearing was titled, falling behind workers in the Trump economy. Now, during exchanges with members of Congress, Geiser emphasized the need for workers to stand together against CEOs and oligarchs, stating, this is a quote, "If we're organized and have the right villains in our sights, together we can change the balance of power." I can't think of a better way to introduce you, Frank, because we saw some interesting things happen at the polls. I think the people are getting the message here, and we're seeing a lot of labor-backed candidates, members of unions, getting involved in politics because enough is enough. Workers first. It's all about workers right now. You know, you cover 5 states in the Midwest here. Talk to me about what happened last week, brother. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think people are tired. They're tired of all the politics. In Northern Ohio, a prime example is Brian Poindexter, an actual iron worker, Local 17. Labor's had a relationship with Brian for a while at his city council race up there. You know, he's on city council. He took the plunge running for the Ohio 7th Congressional District, and it was a packed Democrat primary. I believe 8 candidates. The most of note in the primary was former Cuyahoga County Chair Ed Fitzgerald and former candidate for this governor of Ohio, Ed Fitzgerald. Brian did a great job. Brian won that primary handily. Labor has to start supporting candidates like this. Let's not worry about party. Let's worry about those candidates that have working families first and foremost. Brian will be running against Max Miller, who has failed working families. He holds a 14% lifetime voting record with the AFL, which means that if there were 100 votes, 14 of them, he would vote the right way. 86 of them, he would vote the wrong way, which isn't a very good record. Most notably, he voted against restoring collective bargaining rights for federal workers. So, I mean, it just makes sense to start supporting candidates like Brian Poindexter, who's one of us. Davita Russell, who is our Northeast District president at OPSI, won a competitive race there in House District 18, the primary. SEIU member Nicole Sigurdsson prevailed in a 3-way race for House District 19. You go further across Ohio, I mean, we can sit here and say it, but the proof's in the pudding. Rep. Sean Bryan, who's a former member of the Ohio Education Association, along with former Ohio Education Association President Scott DeMauro, won both District 14 and District 16, those House seat primaries. Of course, former sheet metal worker, Local 33, Dan Croy, up there in District 23. We've long time supported Dan. He's a really good candidate. Of course, in Senate District 21, you've got Kent Smith there, who's a longtime friend of labor. So, I mean, we just have to start worrying about those kitchen table issues and stop worrying about these issues that divide us as Ohioans. And I think that's labor's mission. You know, I had somebody one time tell me, well, you know, labor only supports Democrats. That's not true at all. You give me a Democrat, you give me a Republican that says they'll support organized labor, they'll support organizing, they'll have our backs, and labor will support them. Longtime candidate in Northern Ohio there, Tom Patton, he was a, Republican. He had a great relationship with labor. And I know CWA, we endorsed him several times because he came out on the side of workers on those kitchen table issues. So I think your point's pretty valid that labor is noticing, labor is becoming a force, and it's important. Regardless of party, the working folks and the working poor in this country have far more in common because of that we're working families and we're working folks than we do anything else. So it was pretty encouraging, really, and we were thrilled that all of our candidates that come from labor did so well. And we did really well in some other states. We've got a candidate in Indiana that's a longtime Congressman, Andre Carson, who was actually had a primary, and we really got hard, worked hard and got out there for Andre, and he was successful. So there's races like those all across the Midwest, and I think you're going to see not so much if a candidate's a Democrat or Republican. People are going to start worrying about where they're at with us on these issues.
Frank, I want to talk a little bit more about Indiana because that's a state that rejected the Trump administration's push to redistrict and make it more palatable for Republican candidates. And those that said no to that were primaried out. I'm just wondering, and the ones that beat them are far to the right. I wonder if is that a good thing? Because maybe because of what you just said, they're going to say, wait a minute, we don't want that kind of result. Again, we want workers to come first. What do you think about that?
Well, yeah, that's it's still too early to tell there. I've heard pundits on both sides say that it's a short-term fix. I do know that, a lot of this gerrymandering and hurting particularly minority areas of the electorate, where there's a lot of people fought a long time and a lot of people went to jail and a lot of people fought to give people a voice in this country. And when you start dicing it up and you start doing some of this gerrymandering that you discussed earlier there, it can't be good. It's gamesmanship. It's trying to stack the playing field. Labor for a long time has said, in particular, Flash, like if we're talking with a judge or a candidate, and they'll come to us and they'll say, boy, I sure would like your support. I think I can speak on behalf of labor. We don't want any favors. We want a level playing field. And that's all labor has ever asked for. And the fact of the matter is the table is being tilted by CEOs and these oligarchy folks and these billionaires for the last 20 years in favor of billionaires and CEOs. And labor is just asking for a level playing field. I think when you talk about actions like that, when you talk about gaming and gerrymandering the system to give yourself more seats, they aren't trying to level the playing field. They aren't trying to give everybody a voice. They're trying to game the system. Part of me, and wrapping this up, part of me thinks that's going to, hopefully, karma is going to get them in the end. I think people are smart and there's a lot more independence out here than maybe sometimes they realize in those areas. And the American psyche and the American worker and the Americans' idea of fairness, people are going to get upset, and they need to worry about all voters, not just who's Republican, Democrat. There's a lot of independents out in these areas too that are working folks and can see what's going on. So hard to tell. I know I don't like any of it because it's not an effort to increase our voice at the poll. It's actually an effort to decrease our voice and game the system. And no matter how you look at it, that's just not right.
Once again, we're speaking with Frank Mathews. Frank is the Administrative Director for District 4, the Communication Workers of America. Another issue here is taxes, specifically property taxes, which have been going up because the price of homes has been going up to the point that a lot of people can't even afford to buy, especially a new home today. In the state of Ohio, there's a movement to repeal property taxes, and I know it's getting a lot of attention. Frank, is that a bad idea or a good idea? What are you hearing?
It's a terrible idea. I don't think anybody disagrees that the system needs tweaked because exactly what you said, the property taxes are tied to your property values. Now, there's two ways to look at that. The folks that are complaining about their property taxes are going up sure as heck aren't complaining when they go to sell their homes and they're worth 2 to 3 times what they paid for them. They're not complaining about that. They're complaining about their property taxes going up. Well, unfortunately, based on the way property taxes are figured, they're kind of hand in hand. They're not getting upset when they go to the loan to get a second mortgage and the lender says, "Oh my gosh, you paid 100,000 for that house. Now it's worth 300,000. We're going to give you 200,000 in equity." There's no complaints there, but it's all kind of correlated. Nobody disagrees that the system doesn't need tweaked, but the problem here is there's a group out there that it's primarily an attack on public education. It's primarily attack on burning down anything that as is. The idea and what they connect into on people is that taxes are bad. We should do away with all taxes. Well, the problem here is the property taxes that they're talking about doing away with, if they are successful, leaves a $21 billion hole in the state of Ohio's budget. A lot of times people don't realize that that $21 billion feeds school districts, libraries and parks, townships, county government, and municipalities is who's benefiting from that. Now, let's say you do away with that. Okay. Now you've got a hole that is basically unfillable, and something's got to give. It's going to be our schools, it's going to be our roads, it's going to be our police and fire, it's going to be and that's not a good thing. I'm not against it being addressed and figuring out a way, but that's why so many groups, even the Chamber of Commerce, so many conservative groups, the Republicans and Democrats across the state of Ohio are saying, man, this is a bad idea. And, it's just not responsible. It's just not to throw everything out the window because you don't like the way it's done now. We elect people to make changes in Columbus. And I think, it's real easy, Flash, when somebody, and I think I mentioned this before, somebody comes up to you with a clipboard and says, "Here, sign this. We're going to do away with property taxes." Okay, well, ask the question, what's their plan for police? What's their plan for fire? What's their plan for public education? All this sounds great, but once we lose public education in this country, then only the rich kids are going to get to go to school. I don't think that's hyperbole. I mean, once we lose the services we have, we may never get them back. Unfortunately, the folks that are pushing this don't care about those services. All they care about is achieving a means of doing away what they want done away with, not a solution. The unfortunate reality is you can ask anybody on either side of the aisle. You can ask the Chamber of Commerce. You can ask the most conservative think tanks in the state of Ohio who are all against this. If we do away with the property tax, just boom, then these holes are going to have to be filled with an income tax or a sales tax. I don't really cherish the idea of paying a 20% sales tax in the state of Ohio. I think that's a reality that it could be a 21% sales tax. So think about this. If you're out there and you either rent a place or you have a smaller home, okay, is it really worth that transition because some extremely rich landowner doesn't want to pay property taxes? Then now you're paying 21% income tax or paying a 21% sales tax on everything to make up for that property tax, which I guess my point is it's bad the way they're doing it, just to throw everything out the window and say, okay, we're just going to end it. And then the same people that would be figuring out a solution in Columbus now are going to be scrambling to figure out a solution, how we don't lose everything. So the devil's in the details. And unfortunately, this is a very haphazard solution to a problem, and it needs addressed, but it doesn't need addressed this way. And I guess my point is people really think twice before you sign anything put in your face by somebody that says something great, because usually when it sounds too good to be true, it is. And I don't think any person in this country wants to absolve their responsibility of raising our kids and providing police protection and providing fire protection, providing roads. We all want that. And I don't think there's anybody out there silly enough to think there's any free lunch out here. There is no free lunch. We're willing to do that, but it seems to me these folks are preying on a slam dunk comment. Nobody likes taxes, and here, sign this. And unfortunately, you get too many people that don't think down the road on just what could happen and what we could lose in this state and how far back Ohio would be if this is actually passed. So no, it's a bad thing. Folks should think twice, and it should speak volumes to folks that not only are the Democrats, not only are the Republicans, not only is the Chamber of Commerce, not only are most think tanks against this, conservative think tanks in particular, that should speak volumes that this just isn't a fiscally responsible way to address this.
Frank, I want to add to your comment. There's no such thing as a free lunch.
Right.
I just want to say that lunch is getting a whole lot more expensive now. Okay. Just
That's right.
leave it on that note. Frank Mathews, on behalf of the Communication Workers of America national website, CWA-union.org. You take care, stay safe. We'll talk to you next month. Okay, brother?
Take care, brother.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, the Los Angeles County Federation of Labor. Once again, you're listening to America's Workforce.
This is America's Workforce. More shows available at awfradio.com.
It takes LIUNA to keep America running. Over 70,000 public employees are part of LIUNA, the Laborers International Union of North America, delivering critical services such as healthcare and emergency response, as well as maintaining roads and sanitation systems. Even the National Postal Mail Handlers Union, representing over 47,000 U.S. postal workers, is affiliated with LIUNA. Find out what it takes for LIUNA to keep America running at liuna.org. That's liuna.org.
America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, where you can find more at teamster.org.
America's Workforce is sponsored in part by Boyd Watterson Asset Management, LLC. Find out more about our investment solutions tailored to meet the needs of Taft-Hartley funds at boydwatterson.com.
America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers. You can find more at ifpte.org.
There is unity and strength for workers.
We are the USW.
We are the USW.
The United Steelworkers.
The largest industrial union in North America.
We represent 850,000 members in the U.S., Canada, and the Caribbean.
We work in metals,
rubber,
chemicals,
paper,
oil refining,
atomic energy, and the service sector.
We are steelworkers, standing strong and fighting for what's right.
Now, back to Ed Flash Ferens with America's Workforce.
And remember, you can check us out on Facebook or follow us on X, formerly known as Twitter. That would be AWF Union Podcast, AWF Union Podcast. Let's go to the city of Los Angeles right now. And joining us as our featured guest on the show today is Yvonne Wheeler. Yvonne is president of the Los Angeles County Federation of Labor, of course, connected to the AFL-CIO, and she is currently the first African-American woman to serve as president of that labor organization, which, by the way, is the second largest labor council in the country. She's also the vice chair of the California Democratic Party's Labor Caucus and the first executive VP at the California Federation of Labor Unions. California, fourth largest economy in the world. I remember when it was the sixth largest, then became the fifth largest, now the fourth. Do I hear number three? Do I hear number three happening? Yvonne,
it's coming.
Number three is coming. Yvonne, welcome to America's Workforce. Thanks for joining us on the show today. I mentioned a little bit about yourself. Every time we have a new guest coming on the show, I like to do a deep dive into their journey, especially when it comes to getting involved in labor. And a lot of times it seems to be a family member. Why don't we just pick it up right there? Go ahead, Yvonne.
Thank you, Flash, for allowing me this opportunity to participate in this podcast. I got involved in the labor movement because of my father. My father was a good union man. He had 4 daughters, and one of the things that he required his daughters to do was to learn how to type, and to speak French. And this French came because my maiden name is Francois. And so I learned how to type, but I took Spanish. I learned Spanish in school. And that was the first sign of rebellion, in my opinion. Unlike my other siblings, I would read what I was typing, which I later found out was my father's grievances because he was a leader in the National Association of Letter Carriers. And he would file grievances. And I recall they would come to our door every day. Some of the letter carriers would come to our home to discuss their grievances. I didn't understand it at the time. I was young. But I would read the grievances, and it was one grievance that stood out to me, and it was this guy named Bobby Johnson, who was an alcoholic and a letter carrier, and you driving a federal vehicle, and this is before they had DUI laws. He would get fired, and my father would fight for his job, and he would always continue to fight for Bobby Johnson. And one day I went to him and I said, why do you keep, every time I would type a grievance, which I didn't know what it was at the time. I later found out when I got involved in the labor movement that it was a grievance. But I kept asking my father, why would you continue to fight for this one person? And he told me if a man didn't have a job, he had no dignity. And that resonated with me as I moved forward in my career. But it was my father who gave me the foundations of what a labor union was about and why it was so important to protect the voices of the workers that you represent.
I'm reading that you were involved in several unions, the communication workers, AFSCME. Can you give me some details on that as far as your role?
I moved to California. I was working for what is known now as the General Telephone Company, and got involved with the communication workers and became the first Black woman president of the CWA Local 9586. I later went on to work for the National AFL-CIO. Later was recruited by AFSCME International, worked for the American Federation of Government Employees. I retired from there and then worked for the International Association of IATSE. And that led me to here as a result of some recordings that were publicly known in Los Angeles. But I have both public and private sector experience, and I bring that with me to the labor movement.
So how many people are in the Los Angeles County Federation of Labor right now, Yvonne?
So we represent 800,000 union members, more than 800,000 union members. We have not done an accurate count, but we would assess almost 1 million. And over 300 affiliated unions. And you said we are the second. We tout ourselves as the first, as the number one largest labor council in the country.
Amazing. Well, you got a heck of a population over there, so I'm not surprised by that at all. Talk to me about how things are going. And, politically, administrations change. Sometimes you get people in office that are friendly to workers, especially to unions, and then they get some that are not so friendly. And, Los Angeles has been, I guess for lack of a better term, has been a target, so to speak.
So I was going to share with you. And so Los Angeles, we are a union town. I want to say that we are a union town. And so after the elections, I think we all kind of went into a level of depression because we had known what the current occupant in the White House had done before. And then we all read Project 2025. After the election, I convened a meeting of some of the best and the brightest minds, not only nationally, but locally, to discuss and comb through and do a deep dive into Project 2025. And then we came up with a strategic plan of how we would proceed. But never in our imagination would we had envisioned what we experienced here in Los Angeles. Los Angeles experienced in January the fires, the Eden and the Palisades fires, and many of our union members were impacted by it. Over 7,000 were impacted by it. And so while we're dealing with the fires and our members, we began to see the immigration raids attacking our brown community, our sisters and our brothers in our brown community. And so in our immigrant community. And so we locked arms with our immigrant coalition partners and began hosting Know Your Rights training right here at the Los Angeles County Federation of Labor, Know Your Rights training across the county, and also Know Your Rights trainers, because we had to prepare for this. I mean, you could not prepare for what we experienced when somebody deployed 4,000 National Guards, 700 Marines into your city. We needed to be prepared for it. We hired an attorney to advise us on how to proceed. You hire attorneys for employers, not for the president of the United States, but we wanted to be protected and know what our rights was as a labor movement. We got advice for our attorney, but the Know Your Rights trainings were very essential to the work that we did around here, because we realized most people didn't understand what their rights were. And it was critically important that we partner with our immigrants community, lock arms with them and support them and us, because many of our members are immigrants. But we also hosted what was called the largest nonviolent direct action training in the history of this country and across the country. No one has ever done it. We had 1,400 people at the Los Angeles Convention Center teaching them how to peacefully protest, not to be disrupted in protest, but how to peacefully protest and apply the principles of Reverend James Lawson. And we did that with the late, great Kent Wong, who helped lead that training. And so those are some of the things that we did, but we also, continue. And so with all that training that we had, we came out with what we call 200 peacekeepers that we activate anytime we're doing a march or a rally. That's what we're going to use on May Day, on May 1st. This May Day, we will rise in the spirit of those who came before us, workers who over 140 years ago dared to demand dignity, fairness, and the simple promise of an 8-hour workday. They organized, they sacrificed, they won, and because of what we know is possible, when we know that working people, when we stand together, we win. But today, the fight continues with what we see going on a national level. Across this country, right here in Los Angeles, workers are feeling the weight of the economy, that the country puts profits over people. We're witnessing firsthand policies that deepen economic insecurities, and working families are feeling it each and every day, making it harder for them to keep up with the rising costs of living, and making them make choices whether I pay my rent, put food on my table, or put gas in my car. And those are some of the things that we're witnessing, and that's why this May Day is so important, because we know that workers are under attack. What happened on the federal level, workers being stripped of their collective bargaining rights. We're seeing the attacks on our immigrant communities. They're tearing them apart, forcing our brothers and sisters to go into to the shadows. And so I asked two important questions. How does arresting a street vendor make our country safer? Or how does dividing working people make us stronger? And it doesn't. And that's why this year's May Day celebration is so important. That's why it's so important. And so our May Day theme this year is Solo El Pueblo, shut it down. No school, no work, no shopping. It's more than a call to action. It is a reminder where real people have power and real people will show up on the streets. And now I want to be clear about this, because we have, our attorney told us to always be very clear about what we're asking on this May Day. While we encourage full participation, we do so with respect for everyone's collective bargaining agreement. So we're not asking anyone to breach the no strike clause in their contracts, but there are many ways that they can stand in solidarity with us, raise their voice, and be a part of this movement, because solidarity is our strength. And when we stand on those who march before us, we know that the world will be more unified now than ever before. And that's what happened as a result of this administration. We're more unified than we've ever been before.
Yeah, I'm getting that sense from a lot of people in very similar positions as yours, Yvonne, because, you can only push people so far.
Yes.
It gets to the point where enough is enough. And you take a look at labor history and you will see many examples of that,
Yeah.
not just some, but many examples of that. Yvonne Wheeler is our featured guest today. She is president of the Los Angeles County Federation of Labor. The website you want to go to is the LA Fed. the lafed.org. Back in a few minutes. Once again, you're listening to America's Workforce.
This is America's Workforce. More shows available at awfradio.com.
The Ironworkers Great Lakes District Council, consisting of 8 ironworker local unions in West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Michigan. We build the skylines and bridges along the Great Lakes. With more work than ever before, the Great Lakes District Council is actively searching out the next great ironworker, whether it's building the next Intel plant or constructing a bridge to safely connect our great cities along the lake. So join the Ironworkers Great Lakes District Council today. Find out how and learn more about the council by visiting iwdistrictcouncil.com. America's Workforce is presented by the Laborers International Union of North America. Feel the power right now at liuna.org. America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the United Steelworkers. You can find more at usw.org. America's Workforce is presented by the Laborers International Union of North America. Feel the power right now at liuna.org. Founded in 1887, the Brotherhood of Maintenance of Way Employees Division of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters represents the employees responsible for tirelessly constructing and maintaining the national rail system in America. For more than a century, the Brotherhood of Maintenance of Way Employees has proven they have what it takes to protect its members and meet the ever-changing challenges of the rail industry. Today, the BMWED continues to fight for job security, fair wages, better benefits, and safer, more modern work environments. For more information, please visit bmwe.org.
Now, back to Ed Flash Ferens with America's Workforce.
And remember, you can check us out on at least 5 platforms. That includes YouTube, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Pandora. And when you get an opportunity, here's what you do. Just sign up and receive our shows on a regular basis and give us a rating. We always appreciate those 5-star ratings, so please keep them coming. Let's go back to Los Angeles and rejoin Yvonne Wheeler. Yvonne is president of the Los Angeles County Federation of Labor, well over 800,000 strong, and about 15,000 of those members rallied in Los Angeles for a May Day celebration. And, you know, May Day has been around for a long time. There's actually celebrations around the world. This is a day for workers, let's put it that way. And right now, workers are getting screwed. I have to ask you, and especially now with inflation, you think about the contracts that workers have right now, and then there's those in the non-union sector who are making, you know, a lot less wages than those of our union brothers and sisters. What is the price of gasoline in Los Angeles right now, Yvonne?
Wow. So let me tell you, I purchased, the price of gas right now is almost $7 a gallon in some places. In some places. Yeah, $6 to $7 a gallon in some places.
Unbelievable what's going on right now. And that alone is enough for people to say enough is enough. It's very sad that it's gotten to this point, and it didn't have to be that way, sadly.
LA is unaffordable. We have a housing crisis in Los Angeles. We have an affordability crisis in Los Angeles, even though we know that wages aren't keeping up with inflation. The LA Fed held a housing and poverty summit, was one of the ones first to do that. What we discovered doing and what we unveiled during that training was that 75,000 Angelenos in Los Angeles County go to sleep every night unhoused. 46,000 in Los Angeles City. 1.4 live in poverty. Poverty is the 4th leading cause of death. And 70% were Black, brown, and immigrant. You take that and then you factor that into, even if some of those individuals were unhoused, living in their cars, we know that workers are living in their cars because they can't afford to drive home. And then you factor in the cost of gas right now. As I said, workers are trying to decide every day that they can put food on their table, a roof over their head, a gas in their tank.
Yvonne, in the first segment here on the show, you were talking about the ICE raids and how you prepared for those, and you know your rights, and I salute you on that, because a lot of people don't know their rights. They have to be educated on that kind of thing. But from this administration, it was supposed to target illegals, okay? And what we have seen, they got a lot of people that are legal. I'm just wondering you mentioned, what happened over there.
I can give you one clear example of someone who was detained was our dear friend Dave Wortham, who's a vice president of the Los Angeles County Federation of Labor, president of California SEIU State Council, president of his local union, USWW, went out because of the raids, and we talked about what do you do? And he was detained simply because he was at a raid and trying to defend the workers, be there for the workers. So we had a rapid response network, and he was a part of the rapid response network. And what happened was he went out peacefully, and was detained. What we have seen during these immigration raids is not about whether or not your status, it's about the color of your skin. And brown people were being snatched, detained, kidnapped off the street in plain sight, simply because of the color of their skin.
Yeah. Yvonne, is that still happening in Los Angeles right now?
It's still happening, but not as rampant as it was initially when they came in. Yes, we still see it. Yeah. As a result of that, Flash, parents were afraid to go to work. Kids couldn't go to school. They wasn't going to the doctor, and they were afraid to leave home. And so the LA Fed and other organizations had to figure out a way to provide food for those that were sheltered in, provide resources to those that were sheltered in. Those are some of the things that we experience here. But we are a community, and we believe in taking care of our own. And we did that. We were there for them, and we will continue to be there for them during this administration.
Yvonne, I want to talk about organizing right now. That's a never-ending battle. You got to keep organized. Mother Jones said, "Organize or die." And
Yes.
it's so important that we continue that. And you live in a pretty union-friendly state, a lot of high union density compared to some parts of America. You know what's going on in the South, especially in the right-to-work states. So you're very fortunate. But with that being said, there's still people that don't like unions in California. Let's be honest about that. But I'm just wondering what the future looks like as far as in the area that you represent in the Los Angeles area. Do you have any specific areas that you're targeting right now to make sure we can grow those ranks?
So let me just say this. They say most people don't like unions. If you look at any polling, unions are more popular than ever before. 70% of Americans support unions. We've seen people want to organize more than ever before, especially under this administration. We got Starbucks workers organizing. We got gig workers organizing. We got Amazon workers still want to organize, and we're trying to get them organized. But we also have the union busters. We have companies that put more money into busting unions than they are into just giving workers a voice on their job, allowing them to have the benefits that they deserve, to negotiate the terms and conditions of employment. But we see an increase in organizing, not just in Los Angeles, but across the country.
Another question here. Voting rights. I don't know what they're doing over there. I know there was some redistricting going on there because of what the administration did in Texas. But I'm sure you're familiar with the SAVE Act that they're trying to get through Congress.
Yes.
I don't know how that's going to affect California, but again, there could be literally millions of people. I'm hearing estimates of 20 million people that could be eliminated from the voter rolls. What's the situation in California?
So right now, there is a measure on the ballot to require voter ID, and we are not supporting that. We are watching what's going on a national level, but we have to focus on what's going on here in California. So there is a measure on the ballot that wants to require every voter to have voter ID laws. I leave it to my Attorney General, Rob Bonta, to fight on a national level, and we leave it to our members of Congress to fight against the SAVE Act, because we know it's voter suppression at its best. But here in Los Angeles, we are mobilizing. I came under the spirit of Miguel Contreras, And so we're here running a campaign every day. June 2nd is our election here. We've made our endorsements, and we have a mayor that we're trying to get elected in Los Angeles, Karen Bass, who is a warrior for working families. We have critical city council races here in Los Angeles that are important to labor. We have critical a mayor in Long Beach who is a union member, who is we're trying to get elected, who we will get reelected, not trying. We will get reelected. Let me correct myself on that. And critical city council races in Long Beach. And most importantly, we are running Maria Elena DeRosa, who used to sit in this seat that I'm sitting in today, former wife of Miguel Contreras, who is running for the Board of Supervisors. So we have some races here that we're working on every day to get union-friendly candidates elected. And we always say, we don't want just a good vote. We want warriors for working families. And that's where we are. That's what we're focusing on.
Oh, that's music to my ears. I'll tell you, I've been hearing a whole lot about union brothers and sisters saying, you know what? I don't like the Democrat. I don't like the Republican. I want to run because they're not talking about working class issues. And that's what this is all about. I mean, America was built by workers. Let's be honest about that. Yeah. And workers are getting screwed. So I get it. Yeah. I love what's going on.
We elect candidates who support working families. We vet every candidate that we endorse. One of the things that we're doing, we're bringing back our Civic Leadership Academy here at the Los Angeles County Federation, that we can train our own union members, provide them with training so that we can get them elected. Because we've had Democrats who've fake left and went right on us, who didn't keep the promise that they made when we endorsed them. And so we have been more strategic, more intentional about who we elect to office.
One more question here, Yvonne, and our featured guest today is Yvonne Wheeler, who's president of the Los Angeles County Federation of Labor. And just on May Day, May 1st, well, there were celebrations around the world for workers, and there was a big one in the city of Los Angeles. Do you see, the way I look at it, every day is Workers' Memorial Day. Every day is May Day. Every day is Apprenticeship Day. That's how I look at it on this show. This show is all about workers and what workers need to do to make sure they advance and get a fair contract, get better pay, get better health care. We understand those kind of things, and you have to be united in that front. But do you see, with everything that's going on in the country right now, do you see more rallies like May Day rallies happening in your area?
We just had No King's Day. We rally all the time because we have a lot of contract campaigns. And just recently, and I want to share, when you talk about negotiating fair contracts, we just really recently had a victory with our education workers. They, at the 11th hour, United Teachers of Los Angeles with 33,000 members, SEIU, Local 99, and even the principals formed a coalition and was able to negotiate fair workday demands to the Los Angeles Unified School District, and they met them. But it took till the 11th hour to get to that point. So, yeah, we see that going on right here in Los Angeles. One of the things that I did when I came in, wanted multi-union solidarity. So we have solidarity meetings here where we bring all of our unions together to strategize and support one another. And so doing that contract campaign with LAUSD, we were all prepared on April 14th to go out and to picket and rally with them. Fortunately, we didn't have to do that at the 11th hour. That weekend before, they were able to negotiate and reach an agreement on substantial pay increases and benefits for their workers.
Well, not always, but most of the time when there's a strike vote and a day for that strike to happen, all of a sudden, everything seems to come together.
Let me tell you who's instrumental in it. Our Mayor Karen Bass at the 11th hour. And when I say flash at the 11th hour, I think I got a text at 1:49 a.m. in the morning saying we got a tentative agreement. The mayor went in there and helped them close it. And so she came to our House of Labor meeting last Monday, and we had a sign that said Karen Bass, the closer. This because she's closed several contracts. She believes in workers, and that's what I say. We believe in warriors for working families. She is a warrior for working families.
Well, she's a warrior, and so are you, Yvonne. So thank you so much for joining us. I love this conversation. You please keep in touch with us because you're a fighter, and we want those fighters out there, okay?
We have to. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Yvonne Wheeler, president of the Los Angeles County Federation of Labor. That website, by the way, thelafed.org, thelafed.org. And that'll be it for another edition of America's Workforce tomorrow. IATSE Local 22. Until then, all of you have a safe and wonderful day.
That concludes another episode of the America's Workforce Radio Podcast. Thanks for listening, and be sure to subscribe so you never miss a show. America's Workforce is a production of Labor Tools and BMA Media Group. Find out more information online at labortools.com.